Imagine a world where high-speed internet is as accessible as electricity. This vision is rapidly becoming a reality thanks to SpaceX's ambitious Starlink project. With the promise of gigabit speeds, Starlink is poised to revolutionize the way we live, work, and communicate. Let's delve into how this groundbreaking technology will transform our lives and reshape the future. Starlink gigabit speeds. Starlink's gigabit speeds. SpaceX. Elon Musk's company that provides internet service through satellites has asked for approval to make changes that could make their internet much faster. SpaceX runs a satellite internet service called Starlink, which is designed to bring the internet to places where it's hard to get a reliable connection. On October 11th, SpaceX submitted a request to the Federal Communications Commission to change the way its satellites operate in space. The company said that with a few adjustments to how their satellites move and function, they could make download speeds almost 10 times faster than they are now. Currently, Starlink is already providing internet to many people, but SpaceX wants to improve it even more. The changes they're asking for could make internet speeds reach up to 1 gigabit per second, which is extremely fast. This would also help lower the delay that sometimes happen when people use satellite internet, making it much quicker to load web pages or stream videos. SpaceX's goal with these upgrades is to offer fast, reliable internet service to people all over the world. They want to ensure that even those living in remote areas who don't have access to good internet right now will be able to get online with ease. If the FCC approves these changes, it could bring better internet to millions of people both in the US and worldwide. SpaceX has proposed lowering the orbits of some of its satellites to improve its Starlink internet service. Specifically, the company wants to bring satellites that are currently at altitudes of 525 kilometers, 530 kilometers, and 535 kilometers down to 480, 485, and 475 kilometers. These changes would still allow the same number of satellites to operate, but in a more efficient way. By doing this, SpaceX aims to increase the number of orbital planes, which are the path satellites follow around the Earth, and the number of satellites in each plane. This should satellite orbits help improve the overall performance of the satellite network, making it faster and more reliable for users. Despite these changes, SpaceX will keep the total number of second-generation Gen 2 satellites at or below 29,188. So far, the Federal Communications Commission has already approved 7,500 of these Gen 2 satellites, meaning SpaceX is allowed to launch that many, but they plan to gradually add more as part of their global internet service expansion. Back in 2016, when SpaceX was just starting to plan its satellite internet system, they made a big promise. Even though the system didn't have a name yet, SpaceX said it would eventually be able to provide very fast internet speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second for each user. They shared this information with the Federal Communications Commission and said their goal was to offer high speeds to both consumers and businesses, not just in the US, but all over the world. At that time, SpaceX explained that the system would need to be fully optimized, meaning it would take time to set up and improve the technology before reaching those promised speeds. Now in 2024, SpaceX's satellite internet service is known as Starlink, and it is already serving many customers. However, the speeds that users experience today are not quite as fast as the 1 gigabits per second that was promised in 2016. According to Starlink's website, most users currently get download speeds that range from 25 to 220 megabytes per second. The majority of users see speeds that are over 100 megabytes per second, which is still quite fast but not close to that gigabit speed SpaceX had initially planned for. Upload speeds, which are the speeds at which users can send data like uploading files or making video calls, are usually between 5 and 20 Gb per second. Starlink latency, which refers to the delay between sending and receiving data, is generally between 25 to 60 milliseconds for users on land in some very remote locations, where it's harder to get a good signal. The latency can be over 100 milliseconds. While Starlink is providing decent internet speeds for many people, especially those in remote areas where other types of internet service are limited or unavailable, it hasn't yet reached the gigabit per second speeds that SpaceX talked about in 2016. The company continues to work on improving its technology, and with the changes they're proposing to the FCC, they hope to get closer to that original goal in the future. Satellite elevation angles. SpaceX Satellite Elevation Angles has made another request to improve its Starlink satellite internet system, specifically to boost its performance and make it more reliable. This time they're asking the Federal Communications Commission for permission to change the elevation angles of their satellites. The elevation angle is the angle between the satellite and the horizon when it's in the sky. Right now, SpaceX satellites operate with a minimum elevation angle of 25 degrees, meaning the satellites have to be at least 25 degrees above the horizon to connect with ground stations on Earth. SpaceX wants to lower that angle to 20 degrees for satellites flying at altitudes between 400 and 500 kilometers. This change, SpaceX says, will allow the satellites to connect to more ground stations. More often, ground stations are the facilities on Earth that communicate with the satellites to send and receive data. By lowering the minimum elevation angle, satellites could stay connected to these ground stations for a longer period. As they pass overhead, this would result in stronger and more consistent internet connections for Starlink users. Additionally, SpaceX plans to upgrade its second-generation satellites to make them even better. The Gen 2 satellites will have improved hardware, including better technology that can beam internet signals more precisely. This includes using higher gain, which means the satellites can focus their signals more powerfully on specific areas. The satellites will also use more advanced technology to process these signals, allowing them to deliver faster and more reliable internet to customers. These upgrades will help ensure that American consumers, especially those in rural and hard-to-reach places, get better and more targeted internet coverage. By making these improvements, SpaceX hopes to provide a more robust and stable internet service, which will help meet the growing demand for reliable high-speed internet across the country. SpaceX is asking for more flexibility in how it uses its radio frequencies or spectrum licenses to improve both its mobile service and home internet service. The company uses certain frequency bands called KV and E-band frequencies for its satellite internet system. These frequencies are like specific lanes on a highway that satellites use to send and receive data. Currently, those frequency bands are assigned to either mobile or fixed satellite services, meaning they're set aside for one specific type of use. SpaceX wants permission to use these frequency bands for both types of services, depending on what's needed in different areas. For example, the same frequency band could be used to provide internet to a mobile device like a smartphone or a home satellite dish. Depending on what the rules allow in the US or internationally, SpaceX says this flexibility would be allowed in areas where the US or global regulations permit using these frequencies for both purposes. The company also explained that this change would not require any adjustments to the technical details of their current license or how their satellites work. It's simply a small modification that would give them more freedom to use their system in the most efficient way possible. SpaceX says these kinds of changes follow the FCC's existing rules and wouldn't alter the way their satellites operate. This added flexibility would help SpaceX meet the needs of different types of users, including everyday consumers, businesses, and even government organizations, whether it's for mobile internet on the go or fixed internet connectivity at home. The ability to use these frequencies for different purposes would help SpaceX offer faster, more reliable service to a wider range of customers. FCC might not approve. FCC might not approve the request. Now, SpaceX's request to the FCC might not be approved easily in the past. Other companies like satellite operators and mobile carriers have opposed some of SpaceX's plans. The FCC has also been cautious about some of the claims made by SpaceX, which means they don't always fully agree with what the company wants to do. For example, two major mobile companies, AT&T and Verizon, recently asked the FCC to reject part of SpaceX's plan to work with T-Mobile to offer cellular service. SpaceX had asked the FCC to let them bypass certain rules AT&T Verizon request, especially those related to something called out-of-band emissions. These are signals that spill over into frequencies that are supposed to be used by other services. AT&T and Verizon argued that if SpaceX were allowed to break these rules, it could cause interference and make mobile networks that people already use less reliable. This isn't the first time the FCC has been cautious with SpaceX's requests. Back in March, the FCC turned down an application for SpaceX that would have allowed them to use certain frequency bands for mobile services. The FCC was concerned that these frequency bands might interfere with other users, so they denied the request. Because of this, SpaceX now has to go through a rulemaking process where the FCC will take a closer look at whether those frequency bands can handle Starlink's system without causing problems for other services that are already using them. While SpaceX has big plans for improving their satellite internet and offering new services, they still face challenges in getting approval from the FCC. In 2022, the FCC raised concerns about Starlink's ability to provide reliable service when it denied Starlink's application for $880 million in federal funding. This funding was part of a FCC denial program designed to help expand broadband internet access, especially to rural and underserved areas. The FCC's decision was based on doubts about whether Starlink could consistently meet the program's requirements, which included download speeds of 100 MBs per second and upload speeds of 20 MBs per second. The FCC expressed concerns about Starlink's ability to deliver low-latency service, which refers to the time it takes for data to travel between a user's device and the satellite. The agency pointed out that Starlink was still a NENT or developing technology, meaning it was relatively new and hadn't proven it could handle the large amount of internet traffic required. They also mentioned that Starlink had capacity constraints, which means the system might not have enough power or ability to provide fast and reliable service to a large number of users at the same time. Another factor in the FCC's decision was that Starlink speeds had been dropping, and the initial cost for users to get started with Starlink was high, around $600 UPF front for equipment. While this upfront cost has since been lowered, it was still a concern for the FCC at the time because the goal of the funding was to make internet access more affordable and accessible. After the FCC denied the funding, SpaceX and its CEO Elon Musk were critical of the decision. They argued that Starlink is capable of delivering the speeds and service needed to meet the program's goals. However, the FCC stood by its decision, and the grant money went to other companies that the FCC believed could better meet the requirements. There is uncertainty about whether the FCC will approve any of SpaceX's new requests, especially considering the past disagreements between SpaceX and the agency, while SpaceX continues to push for changes and improvements to its satellite internet system. It's not clear how the FCC will respond to future requests. The FCC seems to be cautious about whether Starlink can truly deliver on its promises, and their approval is not guaranteed. If you've made it this far, let us know what you think in the comments section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.